Welcome back to the channel and thank you for watching, and thank you for smashing the like button on the way in, by the way. You've probably realised by now that my full interview with Amber Heard with my reactions has disappeared from YouTube because of NBC's copyright claim. It's fair that they didn't actually apply for a strike on my channel, so that is something. I do still feel that it was fair use because I'm adding legal commentary to the interview, but I'm not going to challenge it. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is play for you now all of the snippets of my comments, which is actually quite interesting to watch now that I've watched it back, having deleted the interview content, because it makes for one consecutive thought process as I was watching the interview, all smashed together. So I thought that was quite interesting. You might find it quite interesting, and if any of you were wondering where the video went and you want to recap on what my thoughts were, this is the way to do it, only without getting any more copyright claims. So with that said, please do like this video as well and put it in the playlist and enjoy. First of all, there seems to be quite a lot of edits there, so not quite sure what's up with that, but there do seem to be quite a lot of edits. Let's continue. Okay, so that bit, it seems a little bit of a desperation there, so trying to recover her position. Obviously it's all gone wrong, everything's gone wrong for her, so ultimately that much. I suppose she just wants some kind of normality moving forward. That's how I take that, but let's continue. Just pausing there, this reference to Hollywood brats and so on, my feeling now watching this is that that's almost what she wants people to see this as, so it doesn't really reflect so badly on her, rather that it's just a petty squabble. But then she goes on to say it's more than that. Well, yes, it is more than that. It was very much more than that. Let's listen on. Just pausing there. There are, now that I watch this again, because this portion's been played before, there are some edits in there. There's a lot of what she, in my view, there are a lot of what she said that's been taken out. And this is absolutely on point. Free speech doesn't protect you from defamation. Let's continue. So first of all, this is probably something you didn't expect me to say, but my focus at the moment is drawn on the edits because I was hoping that this is the full unedited interview. Some of you have had experience with video editing before, some of you haven't. I'm no expert, I just pump out YouTube videos. But when there's a cut between the camera angles and positions and things like that, it's very often to hide an edit. So every time you see a camera angle change or switch, there's potentially an edit there. And if it doesn't sound quite like a full sentence, that's because there's probably an edit. I think there's a lot of things said in there. Secondly, again, when she mentions, you know, we get free speech from the Greeks, some people will know that, some people won't. Maybe she did know that before, maybe she's looked it up for this interview. I suspect it's the latter. And I suspect that it's because she's trying to run this argument that it is free speech, and free speech is supposed to protect her, but obviously it doesn't in this case. So let's continue. And I think all of this actually plays into the whole story. This was something that's going to change her life, and for some, for many, it's too much. Right, so this reasoning for the op-ed, I stand by what I said previously. I think that there was a reason for doing this, and it was her story, and she wanted to be this voice, and she wanted to be the voice for the movement, and therefore knew that she had to keep it all detached from Johnny Depp as much as she could, hence the teams of lawyers. If it were all absolutely true, then one might question why not just name him in that op-ed if it were all absolutely true. Of course, she tried to avoid that, and I still think that that's because she wanted to be the voice for this movement, but knew that she had to avoid mentioning him because, as the jury decided, it wasn't true. But it was her story. That's one theory. Let's continue. Wish it was considered more seriously. A great question. Should have considered it more seriously. So there's obviously regret there, and potentially because obviously now all of this has happened. Again, her saying it's not about him. it may be about the story that she's telling about him. So as I said in my previous video, truth within the truth. If it wasn't about him because the allegations were false, that bit might be her truth, but there might be a truth behind the truth. The truth being that she wanted to be the voice for this movement. Not just what I lived through, but what I knew and right to speak. So potentially there she's saying that she felt that she had a right to say what she wanted to say about what she knew that happened to other people, perhaps. Maybe she really did care about this movement and she wanted, as she said, to lend her voice to it. And maybe the truth is that she felt that she had the right to say these things in support of that movement, lend her voice. Potentially that's what happened. And there's a contemptuous smile again there. So looking at a defamation claim with contempt, so in a critical way and putting it into other words. So she feels like the defamation shouldn't be able to take away the right to free speech. That's what I think she really means there. That's what I think is really behind those words. And I think that's important, actually. People were lining up to see both of them, not just Johnny Depp, but that's not really mentioned very often. And to be fair, for anybody, this is going to be difficult, whether your allegations are true or not. Going to court is a stressful time for anybody, everybody, unless you're a lawyer. And even then, your first days in court are typically nervous. So that's a fair comment. And again, that's fair enough. She probably didn't ever want this to be a trial and a claim against her. And if someone sues you, you have no choice. You have to respond to the claim. If you don't respond to it, you lose. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. And so Johnny Depp's testimony here has been heralded as being calm, collected, consistent, believable and credible. And ultimately, that's why the jury believed his version of events. And it really is as simple as that. So just before he clearly talks about this bit, when he's telling that evidence there, in my view as a professional, it is somebody recalling events that have happened. Yes. And again, comparing how Johnny Depp has done this, looking at the hand that was in fact severed. When Amber did this with the phone hitting her face, she pointed to the wrong side of her face, essentially. Worth pointing out here that Amber Heard had never sought treatment for a broken nose. I suggest that if you had a broken nose, you would seek treatment for it, much like the other injuries that she claimed to have had. Just pausing there. Less interested, this wasn't in the previous clip, less interested in relitigating this with you. If she's less interested in it, then there is some interest in it. But also, if she's not interested in, or less interested in relitigating it, she is interested in something, and therefore there is obviously some purpose for the interview, and I suggest the interviewer's purpose is to further put out her side of the story, which she did for many weeks. And when it comes on to the witnesses, of course, she's probably been advised not to call anyone else a liar, because as regards to Johnny Depp, there's probably the principle of estoppel, which to a certain extent will prevent relitigation of the same issues. But here I think she's very careful, as I've said before, to not call anyone else a liar. There's a few eye drops looking down as she's saying that, and again by itself is not conclusive, but with other factors it's a signal of deception. So here, I mean, these audio recordings, which were largely or mostly discounted in the UK trial, as I've said many times, audio recordings, despite what Amber says, in my view, do show what happened. They are evidence of exactly what happened. And this, to me, is conclusive. This is not a negotiation, and this is not, as the judge in the UK trial put it, something other than conveying truthful information. With all respect to the learned judge, I simply don't and cannot agree. This is a recording made of events as they took place, of things that she said in the moment, and they are believable. They sound genuine. They sound genuine comments from her, admissions to what she's done, in my view. Let's continue. Just pausing there. Much has been made of them. What she means is people have drawn meaning from them, and she doesn't want them to draw that meaning from them. Well, absolutely, people have drawn meaning from them because they show what happened. There's a look of disgust on her face at the moment. So certain signals showing disgust. So almost that the disgust, either recalling the full extent of those tapes or the fact that bits of them have been taken out and used in this way, but whichever. And there's a big head shake there. So again, in combination with other things, a big flag of deception, testified on the stand, and being recalling some kind of deception as to what she's saying. And this is the interviewer cutting through that. And so a lot of what people do is try to blur the lines, make things grey. It's anything but black and white. And interview response is obviously to cut through that. And he says definitively, he says he never hit you. Is it a lie? And for me, this is potentially where she crosses the line for defamation once again. Listen. And this is a very good point, because if he had done this to anybody else, by now, with the height of this trial, the reach that it has, somebody would have said so. And if he's done it once, he would have done it before, and other people would most likely have come forward. And that's my view, and that's typically how this works. And that's slightly deceptive as well. She didn't come forward. She published an article not mentioning his name, trying to become the voice for something, but didn't actually mention his name, wanted to avoid mentioning him. So she, in that sense, didn't come forward. She did come forward in the sense of the restraining order. But again, if all those allegations were borne out to be true, it wouldn't have ended like this. First of all, there's an edit there in what she's saying, but if you didn't catch it, watch it again. But apart from the edit, this is her again agreeing that it dealt with the same substantive issues in the UK, only she was not the defendant, and that's the bit that they keep missing out for everybody. If you want to see my analysis of that judgment and lots of different elements of it, and the issues that I take with the judgment and how it was reached and the evidential rules, there's some videos linked in the description below, so check those out afterwards, after this video. Again, we prevailed. She was not a defendant, and if she were, and there were full evidence from her brought in, which wasn't, by the way, because the judge refused the application, and I suggest if there were a jury hearing it, it would probably be the same result as it was in the US. That's just my view. And the point there is the public opinion made no difference at all. In my view, as far as the jury is concerned, what the general public thought makes little difference. For example, I've heard many people say, not many, a few people say that they absolutely stand with Amber and Johnny shouldn't have won, but they watched none of the trial, they haven't read any of the judgment and things like that. So public opinion actually doesn't really matter. And actually, again, it doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. They didn't decide. The jury decided. And this, if you remember, I've talked about it before. Johnny's witnesses had said the seating and the layout of the seating on the plane would have prevented him from being able to kick her to the ground in that way, the way that she describes. So I've got another analysis on that if you want to check that in the description below. Just pausing there. So Whitney, I believe, is being dishonest here, in my opinion, because this is not what she said in her statement in the UK trial. In the UK trial, from her witness statement, which I will pull up, in her witness statement at paragraph 62, She writes, he came up the stairs from the kitchen to the mezzanine level. I was on the top of the stairs at the mezzanine level, stood with my back to the stairs, facing Amber, but between them. I remember being worried that I was near the edge of the top of the stairs. When he got to the top of the stairs, he pulled me backwards so that he could get to Amber. I was worried I'd fall backwards. Johnny reached out to shove me out of the way. Amber lurched forwards and hit him and said, "Don't hit my sister." So just skipping back a little bit in this interview to replay that bit just once more. So pause there. He comes up behind me and strikes me in the back. That is not what she wrote in her witness statement. So if I was in court, I would be putting her as follows. So I would put to her and test her evidence. I would say, you just said that he came up the stairs and struck you in the back. That is your evidence. You accept that that is your evidence. And then I would point out that she made this previous statement. It's a previous inconsistent statement. Now, there's an important bit here. Previous consistent statements are normally not by default admissible. Previous inconsistent statements are. That's because previous consistent statements could be made as a self-serving statement to prove what you've said. In other words, let's say if you've stolen a car and you don't want to get convicted for stealing that car, and you go around telling everybody, I didn't steal the car, I didn't steal the car, I didn't steal the car. Then you get arrested, you go to court, then you say, look, I told all these people that I didn't steal the car. That's a previous consistent statement with what you say in court. Whereas if you admitted to somebody, well, actually, look, I stole the car, but don't tell anybody, and then in court you say you didn't, that's a previous inconsistent statement. So it breaks the consistency. Whereas the other way around, it's a self-serving statement, which is why it's not normally admissible. Here, Whitney's testimony in the UK trial is different, is fundamentally different. She did not say in this statement, bearing in mind she would have had time to sit down, write it out, sign it before going to court. She did not say that he came up the stairs and struck her. She said, when he got to the top of the stairs, he was pulling me backwards, which is different to what she just said on the stand in the US trial. Let's continue. So now, bearing in mind that her UK judgment witness statement did not mention that Johnny hit her, but did mention that Amber hit Johnny, and now on the stand here, she says that Amber hit Johnny, but as I said, it's different from the witness statement. So anyway, this is not really part of the interview, but I just thought I'd mention it now. Let's continue.
One hand and was whacking her.
Many people will be listening to these audio recordings and saying that they should support the case against Johnny, but these again, they are statements from her, and there's nothing from him. There's no admission from him, whereas there were admissions from Amber. So of course they don't help the situation, and the jury would have taken that into account. They would have taken that into account with everything else. They weigh up all of the evidence, not just some of it. They take it all together and come to a verdict. And to be fair, that'd be difficult for anybody, like I said, whether the allegations are true or not. She's evading the question, which was, do you think that affected your credibility with the jury? The answer, of course, is yes. It has to be yes. But this is, again, this is a way of, it's trying to convince anybody that's watching that she wasn't wrong after all. So either way, she's evaded the question. And again, that's not the point. Maybe she did make the pledge, and maybe she even intended to follow through with it. But that's not what she said. She said she had donated it. It was gone. The money's gone. And yes, it did affect the credibility. Absolutely. Every trial is a credibility contest. If you are not a credible witness, then you're not going to be believed. And there are rules as to how this decision is reached. And it's usually based on the evidence. So just pausing there. So it's interesting that she says that this was the point at which there was great levity in the trial, obviously meaning an attack upon her respect, and she took that badly. And then she draws back the attention to the fact that it was really about the issues within the op-ed, and that much may well be true. But regretfully for her, obviously, that had implications, because the only person that people would infer that was about would be Johnny Depp. And this again would have had a big impact on the jury, makeup or no makeup. If there were no signs of injuries immediately afterwards, then that's going to affect the credibility. This is another way of trying to excuse the verdict, excuse the result, to say that she couldn't possibly have won, and in a sense trying to convince you, the viewer, that she could never have won this trial regardless, therefore it doesn't matter that she lost, potentially. I take issue with that, actually, because if you tell someone, they usually take it seriously. In my experience, people will take it seriously. They will investigate it. Even if you take a child to the hospital because they've been injured or whatever, the hospital will look at that injury with a suspicious eye. They'll look at you, they'll question the child. How did this happen? And they will take those things seriously. If people report something, which I encourage anyone that is suffering to report it, absolutely make sure you tell somebody. They will take it seriously. But at the same time, don't make false allegations. Don't exaggerate allegations. Don't turn one thing into another, because that's where your credibility will get shot later on. But I disagree with Amber there. People will take it seriously. And as difficult a topic this might be, anyone would seek medical attention with an injury such as that, I suggest. Whilst being cross-examined is difficult, in the context of what she says happened, I maintain that the cross-examination would not be the scariest thing that's happened to her. And the important bit here is they weren't in because they were hearsay, because remember, you cannot test a piece of paper to see whether what's written on it is true. That's essentially what a hearsay statement is. It's anything not said in oral evidence that is said to be truth of any matter stated, because it can't be tested, it's less reliable. So that's why they were not in. And not only that, they could ultimately be previous consistent statements and hearsay at that, which is why they weren't in and they wouldn't be reliable in my view. But this also contradicts what she says, that she said she didn't want to tell anyone about it. If she told her therapist, she clearly was able to tell someone. And if she did sustain those injuries, she would tell someone about the injuries and get treatment for those. So the fact that she mentions these notes exist and that she said all of this to her therapist contradicts the notion that she didn't want to tell anyone at all, in my view. And just pausing, some of the body language there, like a nod of the head and a confirmation, like, you agree with me, don't you? And things like that. Very often when someone is trying to get you to agree with them with what they're saying, even if they don't believe what they're saying themselves, in reference to those messages. I find this all a bit strange. There is no perfect victim. I don't really see what the point is here. Was she trying to be a perfect victim? Was she trying to act a perfect victim? I don't know. I just think it's a strange concept. Again, a contradiction here. Wanted the jury to hear his own words. If she wants the jury to hear his words, then she should also want them to hear her words, which were admissions that she was the one starting violence, she was hitting him, and so on. You can't have it both ways. If you want the jury to hear what his words said, which have a meaning, global humiliation, well, if you are made in the public eye to have falsified allegations, yes, that would be quite humiliating. But then at the same time, what her words said were pretty damning against her, and you can't have it both ways. So another thought on this is that she's trying to reach those that she can't convince. Even if I can't convince you that I'm telling the truth, you still can't say that it's fair. It's still not fair. Even if you don't believe me, it's still not fair. That's the way that she's saying it. And again, I take issue with that. The trial was not played out on social media. It was within the courtroom and the jury made the verdict. And again, for reasons that I've said before, I do not believe a jury would be interested in looking at this after their day in court. Again, a lot of people have mentioned this. I don't need to say much about it. I think it's quite a ridiculous thing to say. Well, the point is, if she's acting but acting badly, they won't believe her, and they didn't. So that's how you can be both. Again, I've talked about this. Paid employees, the people that work for him, the experts that were paid by him, and what she calls randos. Not only quite insulting, but also gives away a little bit of what she really thinks there. And I don't think she has much credit for anyone else that was giving evidence there. So now another excuse: he's a beloved character, so blame the media, blame the jury, blame the press, blame the fact that he's a famous character. And this is because the jury obviously went through all of the evidence, they considered it all carefully, and they decided against her. That's very interesting. That's not who I am now. So she accepts that that is who she was then. So in a sense, she's admitting and accepting liability for what she said in those recordings. And when she says, "I'm glad you asked that," it's almost that she is genuinely pleased that there's an opportunity to let that go, to let that bit of the deception go. And the way that she's doing it here, in my view, is that she's saying that's not who I am now. But if it was then she needs to accept that that is what she meant during those audio recordings. And just to put on that regret, if she has done all of those things, of course she would have regret. And this bit, maybe she does, who knows, but it doesn't make any of the rest of it any different. Maybe she still does love him, who knows.
And I tried to...
But then there's a change in tense. Loved is past tense, so switching of tense again sometimes is indicative of being dishonest. She's nodding her head as she's saying this, so potentially she genuinely believes this, that she is worried that this will have a negative effect on other people, but maybe not for the reason that she's saying. I mean, the reason that she's saying is if she didn't manage to convince somebody, maybe other people can't convince somebody. But I think really perhaps the real meaning is that she's worried that her story, as the jury found it to be, which failed, is going to have a chilling negative effect on other people coming forward, which I hope isn't the case. And saying here, that's the end of the interview, but saying she did the right thing, in her mind, she probably does believe that, because if my theory is right, that she just wanted to lend her voice and that the story was untrue, but at the same time she wanted to lend her voice, maybe that she does feel like she did the right thing by trying to be the voice of this movement, by trying to put this out to encourage other people. Maybe she genuinely believes that was the right thing to do. So all very interesting. No doubt there'll be very many more thoughts to come. This was my first watching, my first reactions, so let me know in the comments what you thought to any of those. Please make sure you smash the like button if you're still with me, and thank you for watching all the way through. Make sure you subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.